Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Today's video is going to be a chat about abridged books. The reason I'm making this video is because recently I made a video and I said I was showing you my books and I said I got the Lark Rise Candle Flip but it's abridged, so I don't know if I'm going to read it. What are your guys' opinions? And you left so many great points that you have just inspired me to make this video, and I'm going to chat about the points that you raised because you raised points that I didn't really think about and different stuff. So I have never read an abridged book, and I normally would never read an abridged book just because I like classical writing and I like kind of waffly writing that goes off on a tangent. I love all that kind of thing. I soak it in. I love a character that just stops the plot completely and like gives a character profile of everyone in the room. Like, she's a queen, she's horrendous, hate her. Like, I love all the sassiness of that you get in like Victorian literature. Love it, adore it. A book that was mentioned a lot by you guys is this one that I really want to read, The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. God help the outcasts. One of my favourite songs from the Disney version. But the book is very different, and the book is massive, and this is like the tiniest font you could possibly get, and this book is huge. And a lot of you guys were saying is that what Victor Hugo does is he like will have a storyline, forget about it, go on a roundabout, tell a different story in the book, just go, oh wait, what am I writing? Quasimodo, then get back to the plot. And you guys were like, it's too waffly, it's a good story but he goes all over the place. I like that, but I haven't read this book, so I may not like it. I'm just saying. I do quite like waffly language, and I like when you meet a character that has nothing. Oh my god, hello son. Sorry son, do you want to just pipe yourself down a little bit, sweetheart? Thanks. I feel like I am like Victor Hugo. Like in my videos I just go off on tangents and forget what I'm supposed to be talking about. Maybe that's why I love waffling and baffling on. Anyway, if this book was abridged, what it would mean, it would be a much shorter version and it would just be a summary of the story. It also wouldn't be in Victor Hugo's writing, so it would be a simplified version of the book. So you'd still get the plot, start to finish, what happened, but all those rambly scenes that don't have anything to do with it, or characters that don't really matter within the plot, cut. They'd be like, it was brutal. They just get rid of them, goodbye, off you go. And then all his waffly language, cut. Straight to the point, sweetheart. We don't need you like giving a metaphor for the sun. Goodbye. Done. So that is an abridged version of a book. Leave your comments down below as well to tell me, like, do you read abridged? Do you not read abridged? Why people said abridged books are good is it's good to get people into classics. So someone who maybe doesn't read any kind of classics and feels quite intimidated by them, if you read an abridged version, you'll get the idea of the storyline. But in my opinion, you're not really reading a classic. Like, and I don't mean to be snobby about abridged books. I'm just saying you're not getting the language, and that for me is the best bit. There are certain books, right, that are classics, that are acclaimed, that I just don't care for the story, but I like the way it's written. Jane Austen, Persuasion. So Persuasion, not a lot really happens in Persuasion, to be honest. The biggest bit that happens is I think a woman faints, but there's not like a massive story in it. But I really liked Persuasion because I liked the way it was written. I liked her language, and also she's got a lot of witticisms, Jane Austen, so that's why her books work for me personally. Someone who I was very intimidated to read, and I think there is a certain snobbery within the literature world of classics, of, oh, you didn't study English, or you probably won't do very well on this, oh, you're dyslexic like myself, you're not going to do well on this, maybe don't read Dickens, he's not for you. He is. He's very, very much for me. And the thing with Dickens is he does waffle on, so you are still getting that waffle like stuff within it, but it is actually really easy to read. And this is coming from someone who like did not do well at school. I'm not very academic and I'm dyslexic, and for me I'm like, this is really good. So my favourite of his is Great Expectations. There are tangents, there are characters that aren't necessary to the plot, but this is a fantastic, amazing book. I'm currently reading Oliver Twist, and if I thought Great Expectations was waffly, I knew nothing. I literally knew nothing. The truth hadn't been revealed to me yet. This book, there are characters in this that have nothing to do with Oliver Twist or his life, and they will just tell you like the backstory of this character's childhood. You don't need to know it, but it's entertaining, it's fun while you're reading it. You feel like with Dickens, he is just telling you the story. He's like, sit down, I'm going to tell you a story, that's it. Whereas in other books, you feel like you're really in the plot, but I like it when someone's telling me a story and they're waffling on about stuff that doesn't really have to do anything to do with it, but you're just getting storyteller vibes. So yeah, both those books I'm really enjoying so far, and I wouldn't want to read the abridged version It would be quicker, it would be easier for me, but I just feel like I wouldn't get the sense of their writing. Because the thing with Dickens is there is a lot like going on in the plot and little funny, farcical things going on. But also there are a lot of things that have nothing to do with the plot, but that are reflections of human nature, and I really like reading that kind of stuff. So the points that were raised were Abridged books are good for children, getting children into classics. I hadn't even thought of that, and that is actually very, very true. Because you could give a child something like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, abridged, because they might love the Disney. I know it's very different, but just to like hook them in. Give them the abridged version, they might read it, love it, and then when they're older, they'll be more likely, in my opinion, to read the actual original version and see how it differs. So we're going to do a pros and cons list for abridged and unabridged. So we'll start with abridged. What are the pros for reading an abridged book? I would say children. It's great to get children into reading. 2, people that aren't very confident with classics and don't think they can read classics, or don't think classics are for them, don't think that classics are going to be interesting because they were written so long ago. I'm not going to find an interest in them, I'm not going to be able to relate, it's going to be boring. Maybe for those people to hook them in and be like, no, classics have so many amazing, great stories. And I do find it odd that classics is just like its own genre, but there's so many different genres within classics. Like, you really can't put Great Expectations next to Persuasion by Jane Austen, because I get it, they're both classical authors, Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, and they'll just be in the classics section like next to each other, and I always want to just like rip them out and be like, she's romance, right? His is like an adventure one. No, they're not the same. And so I think that's quite confusing, because I remember when I got into classics, and like everyone, you get obsessed with those, you know, cloth bound, terribly bound, let me just say. Oh, look at me, terribly bound, let me just say. But all the thing like rubs off the cloth bound, but you look at them and they're all like lined up next to each other and you're like, oh, they're all bloody different. None of them have anything to do with each other, just that they're classics. They're all in the same, you know, section crammed in. So maybe if you read an abridged, you'd understand that like there's different stories and stories that you could really relate to and get into, even though they were written so far away, and there is going to be cultural difference from then and now. It's very interesting, and some of them are a lot more modern than you would think. I would say Dickens as well is still someone that you can, certain things that he writes about still have a lot to do with our culture today in the UK, so he is still a modern person in certain ways. So I think it's good on those points, but I do think people who aren't very confident with classics, maybe it's because they've been talked down to a little bit, and people have said, oh, classics, you want to read a classic? Sweetheart, I'm sure there's a TV adaptation for you. But you won't be able to read the source material. So I think that puts people off classics if like some snobby person puts them down and says you won't be able to understand that. Maybe those people should just try a classic. I'm trying to like a abridged book, guys, but I just can't. So my pros are, if you're a child, if you're maybe don't think classics are for you, abridged would kind of, it's the opening gap to getting into reading. Or if you had reading difficulties, but I have to say at every point I'm like, oh, here's a pro for abridged books, and then I just like, you know, undermine it in the next second. But we're gonna get on to why you should read a classic unabridged. You should read the actual source material. I would say because you get the tone of the book and you get the author's tone. There are a lot of things within Dickens that are witty and sarcastic, and if you had them written without the context of what the characters are saying behind it, people can come off mean, or they can come off offbeat, and it doesn't really make sense. But if you've got it in the context of how that character has previously reacted to things, you get their true tone. A con for reading an unabridged book is that sometimes they can be written in a language that you don't really understand. We don't talk anymore, and they'll be like, thou, where out thou, maiden, and that kind of language which you can't quite connect to, and it takes a lot more effort to get into that book. Classics do take me longer to read than modern fiction. I think that's just a very obvious thing, is that if you're going to pick up a classic, you do have to put a lot more time in it, and in that time you could have read maybe 5 modern fiction novels, but you're just reading one classic, because sometimes they were serialised, and so that means they came out every week, a little bit came out each week. So when they're put into novel format, they're just like squashed in. So there's a lot of things that don't quite make sense because someone hasn't written out a novel, read back the novel and gone, here we are, here's an entire format, there you go. Because it's been written in this very bitty way, when it goes together, sometimes it doesn't flow and it is a little bit jarred and a little bit, becomes a bit of a slog and a little bit boring at times. But I do love classics. So there are my opinions on that. I think there are pros and cons to both, but I don't think I will ever read an abridged book. I just don't think I would have the need to read an abridged book. I suppose if I tried a classic and I really couldn't get it, but I really wanted to read the story, then that is when I would think about it and think, okay, I'll do this. Yeah, let's do this. I'm going to end the video here, so leave down your comments down below. Like I said, I do think there is like good and bad for each of them. I just think you have to, like, you know, make up your own mind for yourself. It's a very personal thing, and I wouldn't look down on anyone for reading an abridged book or a summarised book or anything like that, because reading should just be fun. That's it. It shouldn't be a competition. It shouldn't be something that makes you look better than someone else or impresses people. Just fun. Like, I read a lot of children's fiction because I love children's fiction, and I do get like spiteful little comments. Booktube can be catty, guys. I feel like a pigeon getting my feathers ripped. But you know, I'm a thick-skinned pigeon and I can grow back those feathers. What I was trying to say there before a weird animal analogy is that just read what you want to read. Don't care what people say about what you want to read. If you want to read only abridged books because you don't really want to read a classic book and have like a man waffling on in your face, fine, do you. You do you, boo. What is wrong with me today? That's all I've got. That's it. Maybe do your own like pros and cons list to find whatever one, you know, suits you. Don't do that if you're in a relationship though. Those people that are like, we did a pros and cons of our marriage. How did that go for you? We're getting divorced. Like, if you've got to the point where you have like a whole list, like a massive page of things, like a scroll. Imagine if you were like, oh, let's put down a few things, like this will be a cute thing that maybe, you know, we could change about each other, and then like your boyfriend gets out a scroll and he's like, well, I've been planning. So I am off now. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stop babbling on in your face. I'll see you tomorrow for another video, because I'm making a video every day in May. Video every day. I haven't worked on the jingle yet, okay? It hasn't got a little cute jingle. It hasn't got a cute little animation at the beginning like everyone else. I'm just a girl trying to read.